It has become painfully clear that Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine has entered a phase of desperation disguised as diplomacy. Putin's latest demand, full control of Donetsk Oblast as a price for peace, is not a negotiation, it's a ransom note. According to the Washington Post, Putin told Donald Trump that he would surrender claims to parts of Zaporizhia and Kherson if Kyiv conceded all of Donetsk. Some in Washington even called this progress. In truth, it's nothing of the kind. It is, as one European diplomat put it, like selling Ukraine its own leg. For 11 years, Putin has failed to capture Donetsk in its entirety. Since 2014, when Russian proxies first seized parts of that region, Donetsk has symbolized both his ambition and his humiliation. He cannot hold it militarily, and yet he cannot retreat from it politically. It has become for him both a trophy and a trap. And that is why he now tries to achieve by negotiation what he couldn't achieve by force, a sign not of confidence but of exhaustion. And there are three dimensions to this desperation. Firstly, the military one. Despite brutal offensives during the summer and the autumn, Russia's front lines have barely shifted this year. Yes, Russian forces have taken small settlements such as Chunishino and Poltavka, and they are pressing toward Pokrovsk, but these are marginal gains brought with catastrophic losses, and the Kremlin claims progress in Donetsk, but the battlefield reality is attrition without attainment. And Ukraine still controls key nodes such as Kramatorsk, Sloviansk and parts of the E50 highway. Putin knows that his army cannot sustain this tempo through another winter, especially with conscripts mutinying and the economy in freefall. Hence, diplomacy by threat replaces victory by arms. The second issue is the political one. Putin must show something to his domestic audience, some semblance of success to justify the colossal human cost of this war that nobody needed, nobody wanted, and nobody asked for. Donetsk has been mythologized in Russian propaganda as the cradle of the so-called Russian world, Novorussia. To hold all of it would allow Putin to proclaim mission accomplished. Even if Russia relinquishes other occupied territories, it would provide a facade of triumph to mask decay. And this is classic Putin: redefine victory downward until it looks achievable, then declare it achieved. What isn't said here is whether or not he would therefore concede and abandon Crimea. The demand for Donetsk comes in a moment when Western unity is visibly fraying. European military aid has fallen by more than half since the summer. France, Spain and Italy have scaled back deliveries. In Washington, Trump's envoys are pressing Zelensky to accept territorial compromise, invoking the Russian-speaking demographics of the Donbass, the same cynical language Putin has used for years. The suggestion that a people's native language determines their sovereignty is offensive nonsense, yet it resonates with those who want this war to simply go away. If we use that idea of linguistic sovereignty, then Britain would still be occupying America. Putin senses that fatigue. He is testing it. By offering Trump a deal, he tempts him with the illusion of peace, knowing that Trump longs to play the role of peacemaker after Gaza. The Budapest summit, now being prepared, could be the stage for that performance, a diplomatic theatre in which Putin appears reasonable, Trump appears statesmanlike, and Ukraine appears cornered. But the cost of such theatre would be the legitimization of conquest. As Zelensky has rightly said, it would reward terrorism. Zelensky's response has been unambiguous. He said Ukraine will never grant terrorists any bounty for their crimes. He is correct. Once a nation yields land to an aggressor, it yields its future to fear. Putin's supposed willingness to trade parts of Kherson and Zaporizhia for Donetsk is meaningless. Those regions are already devastated, half-occupied and militarily untenable. The offer costs him nothing. It is not concession, it is camouflage. There's also the moral dimension here. Putin's fixation on Donetsk is not strategic but symbolic. Donetsk is the heart of his imperial narrative, the place where he claims Russian identity itself is under siege. To abandon that claim would unravel the myth that justified his rule, justified his invasion in the first place. That is why he fights, not only for the land but for legitimacy. Losing Donetsk would expose his entire ideology as a fraud. Winning it, however hollowly, allows him to pretend the war had some purpose, and the reality is much sharper. It is that his grip is weakening. The Russian economy is collapsing under the weight of war expenditure. Growth has stalled. Energy revenues are plunging. And industrial production is faltering. Inside Russia, protests over conscription and poverty are spreading. The very soldiers sent to liberate Donetsk are returning home in coffins or not at all. Whole brigades are surrendering to Ukraine. Putin's empire of fear is cracking, and he knows it. Donetsk then becomes not merely an objective, but a lifeline, a desperate bid to save face before his own system implodes. And what of Trump? His deal rhetoric? Let them both claim victory, let history decide, betrays a fundamental misunderstanding. Wars of aggression are not real estate disputes. You cannot barter away the sovereignty of a nation for the sake of political convenience. Peace cannot be built on the rubble of another person's freedom. The United States once understood that. It must not forget it now. If this Donetsk for peace plan advances, it will test not only Ukraine's endurance, but the moral fibre of the West itself. Do we still believe in the principle that borders are not redrawn by force, or have we grown so weary that we would sell that principle for peace and quiet? The answer will define the next generation of European security. Putin's obsession with Donetsk reveals a man trapped by his own mythology, stuck in the freezer section of the fridge, seeking to trade fantasy for legitimacy. He calls for peace, but it's the peace of exhaustion, the peace of empire in decline, the peace of what do Americans call them? Lollipop, a popsicle. And if the world accepts it, we will not be ending a war, we will be postponing the next one.